trying to find a podium before anybody gets up. The Bermuda Triangle.
Good morning, everybody. We welcome you this morning. I am former Senator Gloria Romero, now the California Director of Democrats for Education Reform. It is an honor today to be standing with a broad-based community coalition of faith-based leaders, of educators, teachers, parents, community representatives who are willing to stand up for our children and to defend equal rights protections under the California Constitution for our children to have a quality education. Today we announce that in the Court of Appeal of the state of California, a strong coalition is challenging the United Teachers of Los Angeles and their continued and sustained defense of what we believe to be an unconstitutional defense of only seniority-based layoffs in education. We don't care for layoffs, we don't want to see the layoffs, but the reality is when they occur, we believe that good, strong teachers need to be evaluated and a system in place so that our best teachers, our most capable teachers, remain in the classroom to educate our children. The reason we're holding this press conference today here in this courtyard on Wilshire is because to some extent, it's sort of like the Bermuda Triangle of education. I point you to this map. I want you to think for a moment about all the earmarks here for education. We are in the shadow of LA Unified with their giant Bodri temple right a few blocks down. Here across the street is one of the schools, the Lakey School, that is one of the 45 schools that we are in court defending for the right for a quality education for children. Right down the street is the most expensive high school in America, the new RFK School. Also right down the street are the headquarters of the United Teachers of Los Angeles, who today are arguing that only teachers under the Constitution are eligible to be given the special protection, equal protection rights under the California Constitution, and not children. Our reform offices are right upstairs. Families in school, parents who fight for education reform are right up in this building, and most interestingly, right here on the ground floor is an unmarked LA Unified teacher jail, a rubber room. The shades are drawn after we discovered that they existed a few weeks ago. It's interesting to note that rather than quality, effective teachers being in the classroom educating students, we find still the warehousing of teachers because of the failure of not only LA Unified, but districts in California to not adequately ensure that students have access to the highest quality teachers. I'm going to introduce and acknowledge the coalition. Each one will step up to the plate to identify themselves. I want you to recognize the broad-based coalition that has been assembled to be willing to stand up to the status quo and fight for the rights, the civil rights and education opportunity rights of every child in California, starting here in LA Unified. It's my honor to introduce the very first representative. Each subsequent speaker will identify themselves. He is a leader on civil rights, the head of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference of Greater Los Angeles, the Reverend Eric Lee. Reverend Lee?
Good morning. I'm Reverend Eric Lee, and I'm the president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, Dr. King's organization, here in the state of California. I'm here today because children receiving a quality education is a civil rights issue of our day. Research has shown that the most important and critical component to a child receiving a quality education is to have a quality teacher. And it is beyond the civil rights and faith-based community to understand how the teachers union can support a last-in, first-out policy of teachers during layoffs that have shown to disproportionately hurt inner-city children. When 50% of African American and Latino boys are dropping out of school, perpetuating poverty, crime, unemployment in our communities, it is clear that education is the key to solving all of the social ills of our community. What has to happen is that we have to ensure that every child and every school and every community have quality teachers in their classrooms, not determined by how long someone has been in the school system, but determined by how effective they are in educating our children. For UTLA to fight against the Reed settlement, which has shown that our schools are hurt more than any other schools across the district because they get rid of good quality teachers, is beyond me for a union that is supposed to espouse civil rights principles. To be able to protect teachers at the sacrifice of children is not in line with the civil rights mantra that we are supposed to take care of the least of these. And so I'm encouraging UTLA to withdraw their fight against the Reed settlement. I'm encouraging everyone to stand up for what is right, be principled about your support for good teachers so that our children can receive the quality education that they deserve. Thank you very much.
Good morning, I'm Rabbi Ron Stern from Stephen S. Weiss Temple. I direct the social justice initiatives of the largest Jewish congregation in Los Angeles. I'm also joined here by members of my congregation. Two of them are behind me. Both of them have taken action significantly on behalf of this suit and are affected as members of our community by how this suit ultimately is resolved. For 2,000 years, if not more, the Jewish people have recognized that the key to the success of any community is the strength of its school systems. And in fact, our community has many wonderful fragments of passages throughout our tradition that reflect on that value. And I want to share one with you, which is the saying that our rabbis created thousands of years ago. It says, the world is sustained by the breath of school children. If we don't recognize that in this city, and recognize that it's as true today as it was when it was first spoken, then we are falling short of our responsibility, not just to the children in our schools now, but to the children who will be in our schools in the future and to the graduates of our school systems. We have to make sure that our school systems strive to achieve the best levels of performance, levels of education, quality of education for our children. And that's why I, along with members of our community, about 3 years ago started what we call the Education Advocacy Group. And it's our goal to speak out on behalf of the issues that our group believes have the biggest impact on the quality of education, not just in our city, but we've flown to Sacramento and spoken out at the Capitol. We've met with legislators because we believe that it's incumbent upon us, even though many of our children, our school children, are in private schools, even though our synagogue actually has a private school system, that we advocate for public school systems in our community because we know that ultimately every citizen of Los Angeles is a beneficiary of a strong school system. So we are here joining with those who have written the brief for the Reed lawsuit, lending our support. We've signed on as members of that Amicus Brief group, and I've had many lunches with Jeremy Rosen, who's a member of my community, and he's spoken about it, he's spoken to our congregation about it, and it has become certainly an important issue for us. So we are here, I'm representing members of our Education Advocacy Group to speak on behalf of this issue. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Yolie Flores and I'm CEO of Communities for Teaching Excellence. Now we're here this morning, as you've heard, to demand an end to an entrenched pattern of inequality in our schools. A pattern that is so clear and that is clearly shameful and morally unacceptable. We know that across LA Unified, we have that pattern of inequality in terms of access to the most important in-school factor of student achievement, and that's effective teaching. We know for more than 15 years, study after study has found that individual classroom teachers have the single most largest impact on student achievement of any other factor. And we know that access to an effective teacher can literally make or break a student's chances of success. And we know that this is especially true for low-income and minority kids. But across this district in LA Unified, there is little to no effort to support and protect great teachers, or to ensure that these teachers are with our most vulnerable students. 2 years ago, the Board of Education, of which I was a part, agreed with the Reed lawsuit that the seniority rules that we were using to lay off teachers would disadvantage our children and dismiss the importance of quality and effectiveness in the teaching profession. But we were bound by archaic state rules and a very regressive collective bargaining agreement fiercely protected by UTLA. Even though we knew it was wrong for children, we were forced to make layoff decisions based on seniority rather than on quality. And despite the research and our own common sense that what will most help children succeed in school, what will finally erase this nation's shameful achievement gap for poor kids and kids of color, despite knowing what that was, we decided that incredibly gifted teachers were of less value to us than those with more years in the system, regardless of their effectiveness. And so I welcome this lawsuit. In agreeing to the lawsuit, we took a stand on behalf of children and their civil right to be in a classroom with only the most effective teachers. But fast forward now 2 years. The lawsuit is still in the courts and continues to be challenged by UTLA and what I call the defenders of the status quo. This, despite all the research and all of the reports that tell us that because of our current practices, in fact, in the last 3 years, LA Unified laid off some of our best and brightest teachers. Those, especially for kids who could have had the benefit of these teachers, kids of color and poor kids. But because of our systematic disregard for quality, effective teachers are also inequitably distributed throughout LA Unified. We know that if you are you're a low-income student, you're more than twice as likely to have an effective English language arts teacher as a higher income student, and 66% more likely to have a less effective math teacher. And for Black and Latino students, the picture is even worse. These children are 2 to 3 times more likely to have bottom quartile teachers than their white or Asian peers. But in the meantime, states and school districts across the nation are changing their practices and their policies to protect the civil rights of students. And we must do the same here in Los Angeles and in California. So first, we call on the state of California to join 37 other states in the nation that have required that performance be a major factor in layoff decisions, or be considered along with other factors. Most recently, Illinois passed a law requiring teacher performance ratings to be considered before seniority in layoff decisions. Second, we call on UTLA to drop the challenge to the resettlement and work with the district to finally end the destructive policies that not only disproportionately impact poor students and students of color, but that also diminish the teaching profession. We ask UTLA to work with the district to develop a more progressive layoff policy that keeps seniority, but only as one factor to be considered. Performance and other factors of student achievement must be included. We also ask UTLA going to listen to the voices of teachers, and you will hear from some of them today, who themselves agree that multiple factors should be considered in layoff decisions. And finally, to the Los Angeles community, we ask you to stand with us in support of every student's civil right to have access to an effective teacher in every classroom every year. Thank you.
Would you take a question?
At the very end, please.
My name is Jeremy Rosen. I'm a partner at Horvitz & Levy, and it's been my distinct privilege and honor to represent the many organizations that are represented here today, as well as many others who signed on to our Amicus Brief supporting the Reed settlement. We've put together a very powerful and broad coalition of bipartisan political leaders, interfaith religious leaders, teachers, parents, and numerous community organizations who all join together to support the children who need it most in our society. The trial judge in this case, after hearing all of the evidence, concluded that the pure seniority-based layoff decisions were having a disproportionate and negative impact on a particularly vulnerable group of students, mostly the poorest and largely minority students in the schools that are protected by the Reed settlement. And the trial judge found that this disproportionate impact rose to the level of an equal protection violation. The case is now in the Court of Appeal because the UTLA has decided to try to fight the trial court's very well-considered and well-thought-out decisions. And what is remarkable to me, and I just want to read a very brief excerpt from the UTLA's appellate brief, where they argue that construing the education code, quote, to encompass issues other than the constitutionally mandated racial and ethnic balancing of a district's teaching force, as the Superior Court and the settling parties did in applying the code to students' fundamental education rights, is entirely inconsistent with this legislative history, unquote. To me, it is beyond shameful for the UTLA to come and say that the equal protection and constitutional rights of children should not be considered by our courts or by our school district. And it is for this reason why I have been very proud, along with my colleagues at Horvitz & Levy, including Josephine Mason, who is out in the audience today, to work very hard to support this. And right now, the case is fully briefed in the California Court of Appeals, and we expect in the next few months the Court of Appeal will set this matter for oral argument and decision. And it is our very firm hope that the Court of Appeal will affirm the very thoughtful decision of the trial court and allow the settlement to continue so that the wonderful people behind me and to my right and left can move forward to make additional positive changes for the kids in our community. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kathy Cantner, and I am a parent and a member, and I'm here to represent members of an Education Action Committee at Lanai Road Elementary. What I've learned in doing this work in the past year is that no matter what neighborhood you live in, parents want caring and effective teachers for their children. And in fact, ultimately, a caring teacher will be an effective teacher because they will be the best professional that they can be. At the start of each school year, children open their hearts to a new teacher, and teachers open their hearts to our children. At our school, most teachers get to stay year after year, and our kids thrive when they can run off and sneak a hug from a former teacher. This kind of stability is great for kids, and it's great for schools. Every child deserves to have a teacher in their corner rooting for them. The schools in the Reed case do not have this stability. Year after year, their teachers are let go, and new teachers come in, but they don't get to stay. The Reed case is important in shedding light on two key issues. First, our schools need more funding. We know the economy has been tough on everyone, and yet California is a state with many resources. Despite the economic downturn, we can afford to be more generous in funding public education. Second, when layoffs must occur, purging teachers based only on seniority without considering other factors is poor policy. UTLA is fighting to keep this policy in place, but this practice is harmful to the very children who need stability the most. When teachers are willing to teach in inner city schools, we should do everything we can to support them. Policies that continue to decimate the supply of newly credentialed teachers, the very ones who are most likely to work in these schools, they just leave struggling schools even more unstable. Schools that are this volatile, experiencing such high levels of teacher churn, are unable to focus on the core mission of educating students so they can move on to a better life. UTLA is a powerful union with a large membership and deep pockets. UTLA can afford to set this misguided policy aside and instead do what is right so that these schools and these kids can flourish.
My name is Lisa Alva Wood. I'm an English teacher at Roosevelt High School. I'm a member of my union's House of Representatives, and I also signed on to the Amicus Brief in support of, with other teachers, in support of the Reid decision. And we're all here today because we believe in these children. These are our children. We believe they can have good futures if they have good guidance coming up, the kind that comes from a dedicated teacher, a school with resources, and adults that put them first. We believe in upholding the Reid decision because that's putting children first. But we cannot continue to pit teachers against one another. This is about the welfare of your children too. It's about quality, it's not about seniority. There's not a black and white means of drawing a line and having good results for children. We're creating a false issue where support is needed. We need financial support through tax reform, but our leadership must be willing to be accountable to taxpayers. We need principals to support teachers in their classrooms. That's their #1 job. But many principals are hampered by trying to run schools without support staff. Families and communities are struggling and trust their schools and teachers to provide more than an education. And especially in Reid-protected schools, we are not helping where we should. We're only creating a tense situation in which children suffer. Teachers are the only group of educated professionals that we continually second guess. We depend on schools and teachers, but we're talking about them instead of with them. We do not judge whether our ambulance driver is doing a good job. We don't correct our lawyer mid-argument. We don't second guess our doctor or our mechanic, but we feel free to do this to teachers. Rather than promoting our children's best interest by giving teachers what they need, we're pitting them against each other in the name of saving a buck. Students on the front lines need the most devoted, best teachers they can get. Ironically, UTLA itself can help make this happen. UTLA has an evaluation proposal that includes teachers at all levels of experience. It includes student work. It includes practical support for struggling teachers. And there's a pathway here that actually ends in a red box that reads dismissal. It was developed by teachers for judging teachers based on their work, not on their seniority. Seniority and great teaching are not necessarily the same thing. UTLA cannot implement this fact-based evaluation system alone. Our children need our district and our union to come together with their best interests in mind. Teachers at all seniority levels and children at all income levels need provision, not criticism and uncertainty. No child should face losing an effective teacher regardless of their seniority. Finally, a real solution requires having a child's face and future at the start of every conversation. Let's do that together.
Thank you so very much. As you can see, this is a broad-based coalition from civil rights activists, faith-based leaders, elected officials, teachers, and parents, standing up to understand that we cannot have a great Los Angeles if we do not have great schools. And great schools begin with great teachers. We want to thank you for coming. We're open for questions at this point. You can direct your question to any one person, or you can ask a general question. Thank you.
I have a general question, and I'm just curious, we're standing in front of a rubber room. I'm wondering how many quality teachers are sitting in that rubber room because they dared to educate Latino and Black children to the same level that you, Rabbi, would expect in your private school. And we have no discipline in LAUSD, and we have social promotion in LAUSD. So the reason why the least qualified teachers are going to those schools is because anybody with seniority, not because they're racist, but because they're not allowed to teach, will be not allowed to teach in those schools. So I find it suspicious that you're attacking teachers' seniority instead of questioning why, 58 years after Brown versus Board of Education, we are more segregated as a society than we were then, and that there is social promotion in the same breath of A through G requirements for everybody to graduate. This is blatant hypocrisy.
Again, thank you for your statement. Are there questions?
That is a question. Can you answer it? Why do you attack teachers and the unions instead of attacking LAUSD, who's trying to privatize a system that is worth $370 billion a year?
If you want the question answered, you've made the statement and the question, we will have a teacher respond.
I know some of the teachers who have been pulled out of their classrooms for various reasons. And just as individual as teachers, those reasons are very individual. There's no blanket reason why they've been pulled out of their rooms, nor is there a blanket solution, which is why I am calling on the district and union to work together to find a means of supporting people so that they can do their jobs better.
They've been pulled out because they're at the top of the salary scale, they're about to invest in lifetime health benefits, and the third one is they're actually trying to do what you people say you want.
Okay, thank you, sir, for the question.
I was put out of my classroom 2 years and 8 months ago because I reported that they were graduating and giving diplomas to students with second grade reading abilities. I have a 23-year history of teaching, 7 years in France, and I am targeted with hundreds. 853 teachers were removed last year with no due process of law. Where were you, lawyer?
Then come stand on our side. I think the bottom line is this is not about attacking teachers. This is about community standing up for the constitutional rights of children. We urge you, if you want to believe in standing up for children, we agree. LA Unified has a lot of work to do, and that's why we're standing. Start shutting down these teacher jails. But we are going to work hard to change the laws in California, to change it so that it's a blind form of justice where only the number of years on the time clock matters and quality doesn't. If you think that's attacking teachers, that's your position. We think it's standing up for kids. Are there other questions?
Yeah, I got some.
Yes, sir. Or other comments?
I just wanted to make one comment on the prior question, is that the original Reed lawsuit was a lawsuit against LAUSD. And LAUSD, to their credit, entered into good faith settlement negotiations with the children and their parents who brought the original lawsuit and came up with a resolution that was acceptable to all sides. The reason we're still litigating this is that the UTLA intervened in the lawsuit and objected to the settlement and now has challenged the settlement that was entered into between LAUSD and the parents and students on appeal. The other point I'd like to make is that when the trial court held a very extensive factual hearing on what was happening in some of our most underprivileged schools, and found out that at many of the schools that are now protected by the settlement, there were quite a number of very good, newer teachers who really wanted to teach in these challenging schools, who thought it was their mission to try to help the most underprivileged children. And those were unfortunately the teachers who were being the first to be laid off. And that is what was really killing the educational opportunities for those children. And hopefully this settlement, if confirmed, will do a lot of good for bringing better education to those students. There's still a long way to go, obviously, but this is an important first step.
Why do high seniority teachers leave those schools? Answer the question.
We have another question.
Why do high seniority teachers leave those schools?
Sir,
no answer. The same reason why the rabbis' Jewish children go to private schools. They don't have to go into schools with no discipline and social promotion, so kids can't read and write and are sitting in my government class with a third grade reading ability, and I will lose my job if I don't ask kids that don't know how to read. Why don't you wake up?
Sir, you have a question?
I doubt any of you know when LA Unified's, by the way, I'm George Bazzetti, Director of Policy for the Congress for Racial Equality of California. And the Celeste King family has 110 years of civil rights behind them, okay? Now, I doubt any of you, including Ms. Flores, knows what LA Unified receives in income. It's $11,203. You're quoting Serrano versus Priest. That means LA Unified should lose $2,200 per student. Also, I have found that LA Unified has $2.162 billion unspent.
Also last year, they had 102,733 students that didn't come to school every day. Because the board doesn't care, that cost them $1.14 billion. Nobody is addressing the administrators' lack of responsibility, nor the fact that many administrators should be in jail right now on the child sex abuse for not reporting and for interfering in investigations by LAPD and sheriffs. And by the way, we are on the Sheriff's Citizens Advisory Board.
Is there a
So
question?
I wonder why you're not responding to any of this, which is factually based, which goes right to your suit, your amicus brief, which I read this morning.
I think it's important to recognize that both comments that were offered here is that none of the issues you're raising are off the radar. This group is focused on one particular issue among a plethora of issues that have to be addressed. So we're not negating the issues that you're raising by standing here and speaking out on a particular other issue. So I just want to make that really clear that there needs to be a broad diversity. That's why we call ourselves at Stephen Wise an education advocacy group, because we're looking for the broad range of opportunities to speak out on particular issues.
Let me ask you this. Why are Democrats going against workers' rights, which this is? If you go back, wait a minute, if you go back into the history of unions, and especially teachers' unions, it was because of things like this which were allowed, and which personal ideological reasons could be used. Even in your own suit, amicus brief, you state idealized teachers not competent. And at Roosevelt is the biggest mess of all. They are breaking the law up once, and you quote the Ploss. Do you know that Roosevelt illegally has half of the funding that they traditionally had? That there are 2 Fs for every student at Roosevelt. So I'm wondering why Democrats aren't going to the real root issues, which is administration, and instead of after teachers, because that seems to be the national mantra now, blame everything on teachers. Yes, in any large organization you're going to have bad apples. But let's not forget administrators, like Deasy with his phony PhD.
Let me respond to that with the question of Democrat. This is a bipartisan basis.
You're the DNEC.
We are also, I happen to head up Democrats for Education Reform. Let me remind everybody, the President of the United States of America is President Barack Obama. He is the one who first issued the challenge of race to the top in the nation. I believe he has had the courage to challenge the entire Democratic Party to really think about looking out for the rights of the most vulnerable, children in our school system. I'm looking forward to having the Democratic Party, along with Republicans and others, independents, to have the courage to fight status quo wherever we see it. And in that sense, I'm proud to be a part of the reform wing of the Democratic Party that even goes back to then Senator Robert Kennedy, who had the courage, when you read the congressional record of his testimony back in the 60s, ironically, as a Democrat, an icon of the Democratic Party, he was raising the same issues that we're raising today. I believe in standing as a Democrat. What we're doing is standing up for the civil rights of all children. And to me, that's not only a Democratic issue with a small d, it's a Democratic issue with a big D.
By the way, Obama and Duncan ruined Chicago.
That's your opinion, sir.
It's not an opinion, it's a fact.
Are there any other questions? All right, we want to thank you very much for coming today. We look forward to continuing to work with you as this issue goes into trial in the Court of Appeal. Thank you so very much. And members of this broad-based coalition are available to speak to you as we continue. Thank you so very much.
Ms. Romero, only one charter school did better than the regular trash schools in Chicago last year, by the way. You do not have your facts.